Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 687. I had the white pieces and started off with d4. Opponent goes knight f6, I go c4, all normal moves, and now he plays e5, the Budapest gambit. A bit of a rare move and leads to some interesting play. There's different ways to play against it, but you always start with taking the pawn. That's the only way to get any kind of advantage. And then there is this line with knight to e4, but knight to g4 is the best line for black. He can usually round up the pawn or inflict some pawn damage. And then if you want to hold on to the pawn, you have to play this bishop f4 line. But you can actually hold on to the pawn, but black gets a lot of compensation. So I just play more simply with knight to f3. I'm going to give that pawn back. The usual way it continues is with bishop to c5, and then pawn to e3, blunting that bishop on the diagonal and defending the f2 square. And then black will bring out his other knight and round up that pawn. He decided to bring his knight out immediately, and normally white will try and go for this bishop f4 line at this point, I guess, trying to hold on to the pawn, but I'm not interested in that. I just play e3. And he could go bishop to c5. We transpose back into the line I'm most familiar with. But he took the pawn, so I traded it off. But now we're in a very rare line here. And after knight c3, in fact, we're just out of the opening book. But knight c3 is not a bad move. It allows this pin, but I have time to deal with it in this case, so he's not going to inflict any pawn damage. The chess engine thinks the best move here is bishop d2. And thinks this is the way to play it. Keeps an advantage for white, d6, because of this queen a4 check. Then the knight has to come back to block the check and defend the bishop. And d6 really needed to be played for black to get his pieces out. So this leads to a decent position for white. The way I played it with queen c2 is okay, but the position is really just about even. So black has, you could say in a way, his opening has been a success because of that move. Now the position is pretty equal. Let's see, I played a3 to kick the bishop. He just gave up the bishop pair voluntarily, which I was a little bit surprised at, but the chess engine thinks that's actually fine there. I guess the bishop doesn't really want to retreat, and any advantage I have with the bishop pair is going to be slow to realize. I'm now behind in development. My only piece that I have out is the queen. I'm still 2 moves from castling, and he's already castled and got a piece out. So anyway, he plays d6, opening up a line for his bishop. I go b4, another kind of slow move, but I wanted to get my bishop on this good square, and I didn't see an immediate king-side attack. Let's see, the chess engine, he played bishop e6 here, targeting my my c4 pawn, which is often a weakness in the Budapest gambit. But the best move here maybe is rook e8. The chess engine really prefers this line. Rook e8, bishop to b2, setting up this battery, and queen to h4. So he gets out here on the king side pretty quickly. He might like to threaten a move like knight to g5 here, but of course the knight is really pinned in place because of the mate threat. So he can't quickly build up an advantage here, but he's got a lot of activity for his pieces, so it seems like black is slightly better there. So bishop e6, we're back to the range of about even. Let's see, I went bishop b2, I went queen to h4, and I went g3. So g3 is a blunder. Here, we'll return to that one. Let's see what I should have played. The chess engine likes rook to c1. Once again, knight to g4 is not really a great idea because of the mate. So rook f to e8, bishop to d3. I get my pieces out, trades it off, and queen to g5, or g4, queen to g5, and castles is the line. And chess engine rates this as about even. So g3 is a blunder. That's just how I could have played to stay in the game. So if you want to spot the tactic here, it's black's turn to move. See if you can find a winning sequence for black. Okay, it's not the move he played. He played knight f3 check immediately, but you can set up that check Anyway, yeah, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm giving the answer away now. You can set up that check by playing queen to e4 first. Queen on e4 hits my unprotected rook in the corner. I really have nothing other than to play rook to g1, and now knight f3 check wins the exchange at least. Let's see. I guess it's complicated. I could try pinning the knight. No, I can't. I have to move the king. And then he can take the rook, and I guess I can get the rook back somehow. I mean, I can win the knight back because the chess engine rated it as about equivalent to winning the exchange. So anyway, that would be winning for black. And there would go my rating. But, well, he didn't play that. He played knight f3 check first. And I go king e2. I have to move the king, and I want to put a little pressure on the knight here. I went queen g4. And now I went h3 to chase the queen away. But actually, I could get a slight edge here. I missed this idea during the game. But if I were to exchange now on g7, when he takes and I take back, at the end of this, his knight is hanging. And so actually, I'm a couple of pawns up, or just one pawn up. 4 and 3 is 7, and he's got 6. Yeah, so I'm a pawn up here. Anyway, h3 is good enough for maintaining an equal game here, kicking the queen so his knight discovery doesn't have. He's limited to moves that create a double check. Otherwise, other discoveries will result in me taking the queen. So he did go with this knight d4 check. I just dropped my king back. Came back here with knight f3, and now I moved my king to a different square so he doesn't have a double check anymore, and he's got to do something about his hanging queen. He dropped his queen back to g5, and I went bishop to g2. Not the most accurate move here. The most accurate move here is bishop e2, and this keeps an advantage to white. So white is better here after bishop e2. Say the knight drops back to e5, because where else is it going? I can now play this f4 move, and there's no queen h5 check because the bishop is covering this diagonal, and it looks like I pick up a piece. He can grab on g3 here, but looks like I come out okay in this line. So basically a piece up, and I survive the attack. Bishop g2 is not quite as good because after he plays knight e5 here, if I go with f4 immediately, queen takes g3, attacks my loose bishop, so that's why this is not so great. And also there's ideas of checking on this diagonal. We'll see. Let's see. The chess engine wants me to just take on b7, which is a way of getting a little material. I went bishop d5, and then probably he should trade here. If he takes, I take back, and then he plays f6. This is a very important move. Frees up the knight to move because now there's no longer this mate threat, even if the queen gets distracted. So now f4 doesn't work. He can play this check, and if I block it, he can actually take. And the reason this works is because of that f6 move, and there's no longer this mate threat, so taking is possible here. So that would be best play for black, to go ahead and take my bishop. Let's see, he played c6. He didn't want to take the bishop, so I took, and then played f4. That was the point of my idea. And now his queen move, queen h5 check, doesn't work anymore. I can play this this move here with g4, and he can't take because I have the mate threat once again on g7, so he's got to move his queen. If we back up, instead of playing queen h5 check, he could have taken on g3 and gone for this kind of position where he has a lot of compensation for the piece. White is still a little better, I guess, but this is a very difficult position for white to play. Let's see. He went queen h5 check in the game. I played g4. Now he had to drop his queen back to g6. And I'm able to pick up the knight. So I'm a piece up here, but he still has activity. It's not quite so simple. Rook f2. Let's see. I took on d6. I saw this idea. Rook d8, I can push my c-pawn forward and I have this passed pawn for the endgame. He goes b6 to set about undermining, And then I decided to simplify by getting the queens off and giving up the bishop and going into this rook and pawn endgame. That was not at all necessary. The chess engine thinks it's stronger to play with rook to c1. Say he takes here on c5, I take back. And queen to g5. If you look at this, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of targets for black's pieces and my pawns, and even though my king looks a little bit funny over here in the middle of the board, it seems like everything is kind of held together at the moment. Everything seems to be defended. So yeah, the chess engine thinks white is winning easily. I was a little bit nervous about my king position here, honestly. I'm in the middle of the board. I can't castle. His rook is on the second rank, which prevents me at the moment from connecting my rooks. So after b6, I went for this exchange, just trying to get away from this situation where my king is confined and try and activate my remaining pieces after taking the queens off. So he took, I took, he took back. And I played king to e1, harassing his rook. So I'm not going to show every line the computer thought was better. I think I'm winning at this point, but at times and during this game I only had a very slight edge. I do manage to keep an edge, but it's not the most accurate moves by me. So just to show you an example of how I could play a little better, there's this rook b1 move is a nice idea. If he exchanges on c5, which he kind of wants to do, to weaken my pawns, then I can come in with this check and grab the a pawn. And leaving my king here is also a good idea because it covers these squares, so it's not so easy for him to get his rook behind the c pawn where he'd like to put it. So so that would be a little better. Let's see, he could play rook a2 and start going after my pawns over here. I could activate the other rook. Let's see, he could grab here, or he could switch his attention back to this side, but grabbing here is okay, and now my king can finally start to break out. Oh, let's see. Yeah, the chess engine had king e2. Let's see, after the check, the king can run forward and get into the game this way and escape the checks. So that would be a good play. Instead, I went king e1, and then that allows his rook to get behind the c pawn. Rook c2 is a good move. Let's see, I wanted to activate my rook, so I'm bringing it out here to f1. I mean, I still have an advantage, but it's become a little bit more difficult. Let's see, he took on c5, and I threw in an intermediate move rather than take back right away. I offered the exchange of rooks. I thought this would help ease my congestion. This is probably okay, but so he avoids the exchange. And then now I take back on c5, and he took on e3 with the check. It actually was better for him to take on c5. I think this is the place where black came the closest to having an even game. There's still slight edge to white because I can play rook b1 here. He can grab another pawn, but I can come in here with check and then grab the a pawn, and I stay one pawn up. And still it would be tricky to win this position. That was black's best chance to equalize in this endgame. Instead he went for this pawn, rook e3 check. I go king d2, now getting my king off the back rank finally, hitting his rook and preventing it from coming to c3 here and harassing the c pawn. So he grabbed the h pawn instead, but well, these pawns in the center are just a little more important than the pawns on this side. I went rook e2, targeting this pawn. I'm trying to activate my rook and bring it in to help attack these pawns and promote my pawns and attack his pawns here. Let's see, he went rook to h6. Okay, brought his rook back to defend this pawn. I double. And then he played king f6. That's just a mistake. He should just go king f7 and hold on to that pawn, still with an edge to white. So this king f6 move is finally the last mistake, and I have a pretty easy win from this point. Let's see, he goes king g5. I trade off the rooks, one pair of rooks, and get my rook to the 7th rank. And there's no good way for him to stop me from just marching my king up and promoting this pawn or winning his rook. And so that's what happened. I won the rook, and he resigned. So it was an interesting game. Hope you guys liked this. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.